This is our second lesson for the midterm period. So these are some paintings of the different periods of the different art movements as well. So our discussion this afternoon is outlined on the four subtopics. First is on what art historians do. Second is the prehistoric art, particularly cave art. Next is artistic influence and on the glimpse on the different art movements. Okay, so what art historians do? Art history has been described as the discipline that examines the history of art in artifacts. This according to Poynter 1997. Like many definitions, it verges on the tautological, but succinctly registers the expansive scope of study which typifies the discipline. Now, those objects and practices arising from human agency which are judged to have static value. Fernie, on the other hand, defines art history as the historical study of those made objects which are presumed to have a visual content, with the task of the art historian being to explain why such objects look as they do. He further elaborated with various examples and concludes that these objects can be treated as, among other things, conveyors of static and intellectual pleasure, as abstract form, as social products, and as expressions of cultures and ideologies. These very definitions, guys, underline the extent to which art can sustain a multiplicity of meanings, and that in attempting to interpret details of form and content, the art historian is inevitably concerned with broader issues of social context, causation, and value. Exploring how art looks or appears is just part of a wider interpretative framework within which there are various methodological approaches which are neither value free nor impartial. Although these will be discussed in deeply in next few lessons that we will have in the future. For now, we will try to we should start by considering the origins of art history as an academic discipline. So art is always evolving through time. From the moment when prehistoric artists first began to decorate their caves, painters have always looked for fresh ways of portraying the world or for portraying the world around them. So we've always looked into ways, creatively on how we could make our lives more beautiful, such as these artists from the very beginning who are who are in constant pursuit of looking for ways or fresh ways of portraying the world around us or portraying the world around them, particularly the artists. Sometimes a solitary genius like Leonardo da Vinci, Picasso, Giotto led the way into uncharted artistic his territory. At other times, groups of like-minded painters explore a new style or idea, creating an entirely artistic movement. So this lesson, guys, traces the full development of the most significant movements from the earliest sources of inspiration to a supreme masterpieces that are the crowning glory of art, beginning with a crucial turning point, a painting that shaped the course of the movement or epitomized many of its most distinctive features. A variety of other influences are explored, from a chemist who concocts a brand new pigment to an archaeologist who unearths a unforgotten treasure, or a patron like us, no audiences, spectators of art like us who challenge existing conventions. In a broader sense, social and political events were also influential. To begin, the French Revolution inspired both neoclassical and romantic painters. The invention of printing have increased the flow of ideas during the Renaissance, and the growth of the railways enabled travel to new locations and transformed the way that the Impressionists worked. The pace of change differed sharply from one era to another or to the next. Some aspects of Egyptian art remain unaltered for centuries, while the last few years before World War I were marked by feverish artistic activity. So this is richly illustrated guide encycl this richly illustrated guide encapsulates each movement, taking the reader like us on an exhilarating journey through the history of art from its earliest manifestations to the present day. So as time evolves, so as art as well, and we can see that one on the different artworks that are created in different periods or different art movements. From the prehistoric going to the present time. So there are largely, if not largely, um, differences on how artworks have evolved as well through time. And those are, on most cases, manifested to the artworks notable by the artists on those times. Just like how literary work have also evolved during the different periods of time. For example, um, literary works that were created before Spanish time or pre-colonial period, and during the colonial period, for example, in our contexts, during the Spanish colonization, there were really significant differences, and most of the literary works during the colonial colonization in the Philippines are, of course, our experiences, reflecting the current situations of the people and the country during the colonial period. In fact, to name a few, we have works of Rizal, El Filibusterismo Anole Metangri, which are great manifestations talaga, showing the experiences of people during the time, and these masterpieces were used, as an awakening for the Filipino people to gather strength to really um to also show their disagreement against the against the oppressing power of the Spaniards during that time. And those are very much evident on the literary works of some artists, particularly that of Rizal. So also with um, the artworks and paintings, etc. So most of you are aware that one of the most forms which most people are exposed to, or populations are exposed to, is painting, right? Visual arts. In fact, many of us would think that if we're talking about art, we're directly referring to painting. So painting is one of the oldest art forms dating back to the Ice Age. Its purpose has changed over the course of the centuries, but any notions about creative genius or self-expression would have seemed very alien to the first artist. Many paintings were functional. They were used in rituals, they honored the dead, they glorified the god. Okay, their appearance varied considerably, yes. Some cave paintings in Roman still life seem very realistic, but the art of other civilizations, such as the Egyptians, the Byzantines, and the Celts, found symbols and stylizations a more powerful way of representing the everyday world. Perhaps the greatest difference lies in the status of the artists themselves. That is very true because um not some, maybe most of the artists in the past were not even recognized as artists, as the artists that are recognized at the present time, no, that when you have, say, created paintings and get viral or popularized, then you are to be credited as a renowned artist, for example. But during that time, those artists who painted these things on the walls of the cave where they live in, or some places that they wished they painted, no, we're not considered artists then, or we're not classified as artists. But some of them may have created those works to for functional purposes. Now they may have used them, these artworks, for rituals to honor the dead, or probably to glorify God, or to make a detail, to make an account of their experiences during that time. So there are several theories that were also recognized, no, as to why these earlier artists created those artworks, particularly those artworks that were unearthed on caves, inside the caves. So painting did not offer a path to fame or riches in the ancient world, not as much as the artists and paintings that we get to see nowadays. No, they get considerable amount of money from painting or from doing exhibits, but those time painting did not offer a path to fame or nor riches in the ancient world. Most artists were regarded as craftsmen. The identities of the greatest Christian artists are unknown to us, while ironically, no, ancient Greek artists are well documented, but their finest paintings have not survived. So the one that you get to see on the screen is a one of the most famous cave painting. Okay, this is from France. It's called the Great Hall of the Bulls. Okay, so La Cou, because this is French, so there's like um a silent letter that shouldn't be pronounced. So Laku is both the most famous and most richly decorated of all the painted caves. So in all, more than 900 figures of animals, particularly bulls, now have been identified. The most spectacular examples are located in a chamber dominated by six huge bulls, the largest of which is more than 17 feet or 5.2 meters long. So when the cave paintings at Laku were revealed to the public in 1948, the overriding reaction was astonishment. Everybody got astonished for such discovery, for such unearthing of a new discovery in France. Questions arose like, how could primitive people with so few resources have produced pictures or have produced paintings of such sophistication? So you cannot imagine, no, na with the limited resources that they had in the past, with the limited knowledge about the principles of arts, the elements of arts, they were able to produce such a sophisticated artwork. So you tend to ask that question. So same with the people in France who first who first knew uh who first knew the cave paintings at Lacu, no, that was revealed to the public in 1948. With each new discovery, this sense of wonder has returned. In the 1990s, the age of the oldest painted cave was pushed back to around 3000 BCE. And there is every likelihood that in the future, this very boundary may even go back even further. With the kind of advancement that we have, with the new technologies that we can use in unearthing hidden treasure, it is a possibility that what has been recorded in the past. No, as the earliest cave painting, for example, may even go back even further. Kung 3,000, baka in the future, we could discover with the use of technologies and advancements na baka it wasn't 3,000 BCE but probably 50,000 or even further. No, and why is that? Why is technology has helped, no, in unearthing discoveries? Because with discoveries, it is much easier to estimate the age of the artwork, no, and it is also much, I think, easier to tell, no, to make an estimate on, um and to, verify documents. Kasi dati they would have difficulty kasi with the limited evidences presented, we we right away, we can only tell based on evidences, and if we have only few evidences that could tell, then we will rely on those evidences alone. But nowadays, with the sharing of information accessible to internet, with verification can be done across, with among archaeologists, historians, now that they could share information, and there is now a more accessible way of verifying or validating information, because you can just send documents via online. And along with that is the use of technologies. Okay, we are now using, um meanwhile, no, scientific advancements like radiocarbon dating, yung nagtetel sa atin ng estimate date, accelerator mass spectrometry, and DNA analysis are providing an increasingly detailed understanding of both the paintings and their archaeological settings. So this is what I'm talking about a while back. The sheer number of surviving decorated caves also continues to grow. At present, more than 360 have been recorded in Western Europe alone. Comparable sites have also been found in many other parts of the world, confirming that cave art was a truly global phenomenon. Okay. How about artists from Ice Age? Cave paintings in Europe, guys, were produced by hunter-gatherer communities in the latter stages of the Ice Age. When the paintings were first studied, it was assumed that the images simply reflected the everyday lives of these people. However, it soon became clear that many of these caves were not normally inhabited, and in addition, that the paintings were executed in places where they could not be seen. As a result, it was suggested that some caves were sanctuaries and that the act of painting served some ritual purpose. So there were several theories that came into the picture as to why these artists or people created these paintings on caves. What were really the reasons behind? Some theorists, they said that they were accounts on the daily day-to-day experiences of the people. However, others also suggested that these caves were sanctuaries. So they they were not the places where people used to live, but they were places which could hardly be lived, and which could hardly be seen. So they thought of that this act of painting served some ritual purposes. Like if it is a solemn place, no, and then you have these paintings, then probably those people in the past use this particular place for ritual purposes or for solemn activities. So they have that idea. They had that idea. For many years, the most popular theory was that the painting were associated with hunting magic. Yeah, that's another angle to look into. By depicting large, healthy creatures on the wall and on the cave, Their ideal food source, the cavemen were hoping to ensure the future supply of these animals for their hunters. Gradually, though, as more paintings were discovered, a flaw in this theory became apparent, so another contradiction came in. The study of food deposits showed that, in many cases, the cave artists were not portraying the beast they actually ate, the, the animals painted on the walls. At Laku, the one that I've shown you earlier, for instance, 90% of the food remains wearing their bones. But this animal was depicted only once. In recent years, new theories have proliferated. Some scholars have argued that individual animals should not be viewed in isolation. So it shouldn't be that each animal painted on the cave should not be viewed in isolation. They believe that it is more helpful to look at the entire panel, including its various signs like the hands, the arrows, okay, the grids on the cave art. Okay, so these hypotheses arising from, for example, Chinese horse, okay, also illustrates this approach. There is also a great interest in the links with shamanism. So in the 19th and 20th centuries, the European anthropologists gained important insights into the rock art of southern Africa by studying the shamanistic uh, practices of local bushmen. Since then, scholars have explored parallels with European cave painting. Okay, so let's take a look at on the beginnings, the landmarks in rock art. So in December 1994, guys, three spelunkers were exploring a cave in the Ardèche Valley in France. Pardon me if I may mispronounce French, because truly, no, French is one of the most difficult languages in the world. Okay, not to mention its phonology. When I studied French, I have had really difficulty, particularly on phonology. Not much as grammar, kasi grammar in French is almost similar in English. We follow almost similar pattern SVO. In fact, we can just make a sentence, no, following translations of words, because the arrangement of words in a sentence is almost similar to that of English, that there the the subject comes first, then the verb, and then the object, SVO form. But in phonology, in my study of French language, one of my difficulty really is phonology, particularly talaga in pronunciation, because of so many muted letters, silent letters, no, as you may be aware of. No. In fact, you really have to be aware, no, on each, because the spellings do not really tell you the pronunciation in most cases in French. Anyway, so these discoverers explored a cave in the Ardèche Valley in France when they came across a series of painted chambers. After radiocarbon test, which is one of the ways to tell, no, the age, estimate the age of the artwork and examine the artwork itself, were carried out. Okay, archaeologists were astonished to discover that the paintings were far older than other known examples. The earliest section dates to around 30,000 BCE, while a second period of habitation dates from about 25,000 BCE. So the cave has been named after one of the speleologists like John Murray Chauvet, while his companions like Elaine Brunet and Christian Hillary have given their names to individual chambers. So these caves now are named after these three people, no, who have first discovered these particular chambers. So the discovery of the Chauvet, I don't know if, oh, okay. The discovery of the Chauvet cave made experts revise their views on the aggranation period and on the nature and purpose of cave painting itself. So yung sabi ko, the more discoveries there are, the more likely that those initial findings or initial reviews have to change, because there will be another sets of evidences um that could be added, and possibly would require the initial findings to be reviewed. So yun yung nangyayari. The The animals depicted are different from those in latter caves. Alongside the usual herbivores, kasi mga herbivores yun ng mga animals, there are images of dangerous creatures that were rarely pursued. For example, bears, lions, and woolly rhinos. These undermine the theory that cave paintings were designed solely for hunting rituals. So those were the findings of these three people. Okay, so let's take a look at the landmarks. Okay. In rock art. So dated in 38,000 BCE, this is the start of the Upper Paleolithic period, the final phase of the Paleolithic age. It is subdivided into tool-making phases known as industries. Then followed to that is 34,000 BCE, the Aurignacian industry named after a site in Arignac emerges in France. So the earliest cave paintings are produced. Then the next one is dated in 28,000 BCE, the time of the Crevacian industry, named after a site of La Grave and the Dordogne area of France. And then 6,000 to 10,000 BCE, the closing phase of the Upper Paleolithic era is the Magdalenian industry, named after the site of La Magdeleine in France. The finest cave paintings were created during this era. Then after that is 13,000 BCE, the late glacial period when the ice sheets gradually begin to retreat. And then following that is the Neolithic wet phase, a milder period when Saharan North Africa is habitable. To quote one of Maria de Sotola, daughter of local landowners in Marcela de Sotula, on the discovery of Altamira cave painting said, I pointed the pictures out to my father, but he just laughed soon. He just laughed. Soon, however, he got more interested. He was so excited he could hardly speak. So at the beginning, just like how I started to get fascination with um, National Geographics about arts. The first time that I have heard, or the first time I saw it, I never got interested. No, I never bothered to. I have never bothered to watch it, not even for a minute. But then there was a person who introduced me to it, or not really introduced, but um he was fun of watching. And then I one day I got interested, not knowing that after that I became so engrossed on watching it. So the more that I get to know about the past world, particular the arts in the past, the more I became and become interested in knowing art, and the more I feel that I become more appreciative of art. So I guess that's a way, of appreciating arts, knowing its roots, um, knowing its origins. Okay. So there are also artistic influences, guys. Historians have long been skeptical of the idea that cave paintings are straightforward reflections of the daily life of the hunter-gatherer. As more and more images have become available for study, they have analyzed every symbol and every unusual pose for hints about their purpose. Increasingly, it seems likely that the cave artists were influenced by their ritual practices and beliefs. So let's take a look at these influences. To begin, you have painted symbols. So these are found in many caves Hands are particularly common, taking the form of handprints, palm prints, stenciled outlines. Often they are combined with an animal image. So in this case, the charcoal line to the left is part of a mammoth. All right. This is entitled The Panel of the Hand Stencils. Dated in 30,000 BCE, situated deep inside Chauvet Cave. Remember that this particular chambers, at least those three people who first discovered it, were named after them. So this particular cave is named Chauvet Cave after Marie. Okay. Then you have red ochre is one of the most common pigments found in cave painting. It also appears to have had a deeper symbolic significance. It was daubed on cult figurines as well as on the bodies of the dead and their grave goods. So one is Himba women, grinding red ochre that is mixed with butter as ash and perfume resin to produce a balm that protects the skin. You have shamanistic practices. This may be linked with many of the cave paintings. This strange scene, unparalleled in Paleolithic art, shows a birdman who may be dead or in a trance lying next to a bird stick that may either a spear thrower or a ritual implement. So this is titled Bird-Headed Man, and then unusual poses. A curled up bison in an animal painting have taxed the ingenuity of archaeologists. The favorite theory is that this particular bison is rolling in its urine in order to create territorial markings. However, some also believe or some also interpreted it as dying, sleeping, or giving birth. Okay, so now let's in this section we'll take a glimpse of the different art movements. So we will explore aspects of the development of art history, which is of course your task, on discussing, on presenting to us each of these. As understood in its very broadest sense, art history, guys, is the academic study concerned with exploring the making and meaning of those objects and practices judged to have aesthetic value, right? As you go along with these different art movements, okay, keep in mind the ideas about what art was generally assumed to be through these successive historical periods. While yes, it's true that art is not a static category, similarly, the assumptions and practices of art historians have also changed through time. Now, in this sense, the actual production of art and its academic study are symbiotic. So, let's take a look on the different periods. So dated from Stone Age, then characteristics of the art of this art movement, what who are the chief artists and major artworks, what were the historical events during the time. The next is Mesopotamian period. Okay, the same. So this practically what you will see in the document that I will send you guys. That you have art movement, characteristics, chief artists, and major works, and then some historical events. So you are guided on what to put in your presentation. You have Egyptian period, Greek and Hellenistic period, Roman period, Indian, Chinese, and Japanese period, Byzantine and Islamic, Middle Ages, Early and High Renaissance, Venetian and Northern Renaissance, Mannerism, Baroque, Neoclassical, Romanticism, Realism, Impressionism, Post-Impressionism, Fauvism, and Expressionism. Then, Cubism, Futurism, Supremativism, Constructivism, and Dada and Surrealism. Then, lastly, I think is our abstract expressionism and postmodernism and deconstructivism. So these are the art movements or the historical periods of art where you will include in your presentation.